One, we're carrying on from our last video today. Now David is going to show us the backyard of the garden where he has been planting over the last few years. So now David has another plant he'd like to show us. All right, David, go ahead. What would you like to show us now?
So I'll show you a little bit about the back of the garden. This is a grape vine.
Amazing.
This was already here. It's
right.
not, I don't actually know if it's native or not. This was planted by the previous owners of the house. And but I leave it here because when the grapes ripen, they're a good food source for the birds and squirrels.
Amazing.
Chipmunks and
But just to be clear, these are grapes like you would find in a supermarket that you could buy and eat. And these are grapes growing in Brooklyn in a backyard, barely even cultivated by anyone. They just grow naturally.
That's correct. Those
amazing.
Are edible grapes, but they're here. We do have opossums and raccoons and squirrels and all kinds of native
and people
birds.
could eat. Do you ever eat? Have you picked the grapes on this vine? Like, are they good? Do they grow pretty tasty?
I have. The only problem is they have a lot of seeds, so you have to get rid of the seeds on them. But they are edible.
Fascinating. All right, we'll have to look at this again, and people should realize, what does it take to plant a grapevine? Do we need to look that up, or do you have a familiarity with what? Is it just putting a seed in the ground, or?
Well, again, I didn't plant this. I let it go here because it's a good food source, but I don't know. I don't have expertise.
Fine. I mean, honestly, this does look familiar in terms of the leaf shape and every logo I've ever seen on a bottle of wine. Like I can kind of recognize the shape as familiar, but this will be fascinating to watch.
Yeah. So this.
All right.
So
terrific.
So then, I just wanted to point out over here.
Okay.
We do have poison ivy.
Wow.
If you're wondering what poison ivy look like, this is the poison ivy.
Fascinating.
So usually we say leaflets 3, let it be.
Right.
Okay, we don't want to touch it. But you'll notice that poison ivy, first of all, is native.
Right.
And I leave it here because it does have when the berries come out, they are a good food source for birds and other animals.
Right.
So if you don't touch it, it's just fine. It grows as a vine, and we're going to leave it there. It's away from people. We don't touch it, but it will be a good food source when the berries come out in the fall for the local wildlife.
Fascinating.
So we have that.
So poison ivy has a beneficial role. We just know it is something to be avoided because it gives you a rash. But it grows. So the berries that it grows, I assume humans cannot eat them.
Right. Yeah, you cannot. But animals can and birds can, yes.
Right. So rodents, squirrels, possums, raccoons, they can eat it.
Yeah, birds. I know birds in particular will eat them. I'm not sure about the others.
I know that dogs, as another example, can eat certain foods humans can, and humans can eat foods dogs can. You don't give a dog chocolate. Right. So obviously, there just happens to be, as due to biology, some foods they can eat that we can, and vice versa.
Right.
Now, okay, fascinating.
Good source for the animals, for the native animals.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
In the back we have. It could be that once the entire yard might have been soil.
Okay.
But it's been concreted over, right? It's paved over. So right now we just have this local back section. So we'll show you about the back section.
Okay, sure.
So in this area right next to the shed, this is where we put all the grass cuttings. So we don't put the grass cuttings into plastic bags because that would just end up in a landfill or in a incinerator.
It's perfectly biodegradable, and if 8 million people put their grass in bags, it would be like normal trash. It would fill the landfill. A little bit would be okay, but if everyone is throwing their grass with the trash, that can fill the landfill up also, right?
Exactly. So why take something that's biodegradable and put it in a plastic bag, which is non-biodegradable?
Right.
So instead of doing that, what we do is I just pile it back here next to the shed. And if you'll notice, you can just focus in here. When we go below, we end up with this very beautiful, nice, rich soil, black soil.
Wow, that's a work of art. That's a work of beauty. Look at that.
And then we can redistribute this among the other plants.
So explain to me now, this pile is helping the soil how? You're saying the organic substances here decompose, and how does that affect the soil here, which looks beautiful? Yes?
Because the organisms that decompose the soil, the different bacteria, worms, and so on, the decomposers will take the nutrients from the plants and put it back into the soil.
Fascinating.
And
so that's what's happening here. That's what's creating this beautiful soil that's underneath this.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
So that's exactly what cycling is. So we're cycling.
So with leaves, let me ask you this. So when we rake our leaves, we always have to clear it. I always have to put it in bags, and they come and take it away. Leaves don't seem to break down. Whenever I look at fallen leaves, they just sit there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the recommendation for a native plants garden actually is to leave the leaves and then any cuttings on the location, and
Wow.
they will break down. Now, that's true. If you have a lawn, you don't have the materials you need to break down the leaves. That's true. But if you have a forest, anybody knows, you go through a walk through the forest, every year the leaves are falling down.
Right,
And
right.
they go into the soil.
Right.
So when you have natural conditions, the leaves will break down, the branches will all break down by themselves, but you need the natural conditions. So here we
Interesting.
have this compost pile. That's part of
Beautiful.
this,
I mean, I stand here and it already feels rustic. It feels like I'm delving into the earth. I mean, it just has a marvelous feeling of country in the midst of the city. I love it.
yeah. So,
It's terrific.
So there's the compost area.
Okay.
Then again, the plants that I've planted over in the other section the flowers have not come up yet. Hopefully they will be coming up later. Just to point out that we have a bird bath, because what you're looking for in a native plants garden, you want to get the habitat for the animals. And what we've done in a city environment, an urban environment, is we paved over any kind of streams or lakes or ponds that there had once been. So the animals don't have a water source. So we have to put the water source back. So one of the things that we can do is put out bird baths. And this one doesn't have water in it yet. It's a little bit cold yet, but we're going to put water in there. And
Great.
We'll have that as a source for water for the birds. You can put other water sources on the ground for other animals like raccoons. We'll do that as well.
So when we were walking before, you mentioned to me that you don't really see a large traffic of birds here on an ongoing basis, but you feel like you just want to make this an inviting environment for them.
Right, but if you notice, actually, we will see more species in the back here, because in the back we have the cover from other trees, from other yards.
Yeah, look how beautiful. This is the value of trees right here. 1 or 2 trees, and yet this is all a miniature habitat for squirrels and other animals. This is heaven.
Right, so we do get raccoons and opossums, and we get bird species
Terrific.
here that we will not get a couple of blocks away, because they do have the cover here, and they have the native...
And raccoons, do raccoons push out the kind of rodents we don't want? Because my feeling is, I've never really heard of raccoons being a problem invading people's homes. I'm sure it's happened somewhere in the natural world, but I don't hear of it as a pervasive problem. So am I correct on that?
Well, for any kind of wildlife, what you want to make sure is, you don't want to put out, for example, if you're putting out garbage, you want to make sure it's animal proof, right? So although we like to have the raccoons, we like to have the opossums and skunks, these are all native animals, we don't want them in the wrong places. You know, they'll get enough food for themselves from the plants and the grapes, so we don't want to feed anything, right? So the problem is when people start feeding the bears and the foxes and to take pictures, then the wildlife becomes a problem. So we don't do that here. We put out native plants and the grapes and different types of foods for the animals to get it for themselves.
Very
and
cool.
Then we don't get any non-natives. We don't have a problem with rats or mice. We make an environment that's inviting for the native animals, and we don't have a problem with the non-natives that we're trying to keep out.
Okay, good to know. This is all amazing. David, thank you for this tour. I'm sure we're going to revisit this. You've told me you worked on this for years, right?
That's right. This is the 6th season that we're approaching in this particular garden.
Then this is great, because we already can look at the whole natural cycle, and this will be our little working, living laboratory.
Right.
All right, David Rosenfeld, thank you so much. I'm Stephen Mance. It's been great to share this with you. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like our channel, like our videos, subscribe, leave any comments you wish, and we're really glad to be able to bring you this little look at outdoors here in Brooklyn, the beautiful borough of Brooklyn, where, as you can see, we have the city and the natural life thriving side by side. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. We'll see you again. Take care.